Hi everyone, I'm Dave Bovin. I serve as a Dean for the School of Business and Technology at Chipola College. This is an exciting day today. We have Dr. Bell with us. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Bell just published a chapter in a book, and so we are here to showcase his hard work and to learn more about Dr. Bell and his research interests and kind of just his passion for academics. He's a professor. He teaches Spanish at Chipola College.
Spanish and Hispanic cinema.
That's fantastic. What led you to be interested in a foreign language?
I guess it was probably foreign travel that started me with language learning, although I did take Latin and French in high school. But I was working as an outdoor coordinator at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, Nebraska, and my job was taking students on foreign travel experiences. I guess we call them high-risk experiences today, such things as backpacking. And I took a group down to Mexico in a canyon region there, and I quickly learned that unless you were going to depend on a translator, which is dangerous, you better learn the language yourself to find your way around. So then I came back, and the university had a policy where you could take a class for $1 a credit hour if it was related to your work, and so I just started working on a second bachelor's degree in Spanish.
Then you pursued graduate studies and a PhD and
went on to Florida State and got a master's degree and PhD there. So it was kind of a long road that I started relatively late in life.
So it's the journey that makes it exciting. You're not really when you start or when you get there. It's just all the exciting stuff along the way.
A lot of people think, well, you're too old to go back to school or too old to learn or something, but in my case, that wasn't the case. I was kind of always in school for many, many years, but working on different degrees, different things. But Spanish continued to interest me because it's something that you can practice every day, and yet you never really learn everything there is to learn. So there's always more to learn.
I have an interesting tidbit. I may have shared it with you before, but Dr. Clemens often talks about how they had a search for someone before they found you, of someone who could teach Spanish on campus. And she still is so excited when she talks about how they found your application and were able to interview and hire you. So we're so fortunate to have you here at Chipola College. So thanks for your great work.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I know just as we were kind of meeting up to come over here for this interview, for this discussion, the showcase of your publication. Was this your cinema class that you're in today, or?
This was a Spanish 1 class that I was in today.
I've heard many of the students, your cinema class is an elective, and it's become quite popular on campus as well.
Well, once the word got out that you didn't have to have Spanish to take that class, that the films we were using were all in English, were with English subtitles in the original Spanish, and that the writing was going to be done in English. And the word got out on that, then all of a sudden the enrollment started to explode, and I might be struggling to get 8 students one year, and the next I got 17, and the next 24, and now it's being offered 3 times a year, 2 sections in the spring and 1 section in the fall. And 5 years ago probably, we'd be lucky to get 1 class.
And that was your idea for an elective, right, to kind of bring Spanish to a larger audience?
Yes, and it counts as a international diversity course, which is important if you're going to be transferring to FSU or University of Florida. And it gives students a cultural awareness of South America, Central America, and Spain that you can see through film, that most of them have a very low cultural quotient, let's call it, of countries outside the United States, and particularly Central and South America. Of course, now, we're having all these immigration issues, and it's very helpful for them to see something from the country's eyes. And so I guess it's that, and the fact that students nowadays probably would rather view a film than they would read a book.
Yeah, our videos, like we're filming today, seem to be quite popular. The social media push, so it's generational. Who knows? It's just the trend, though, for sure.
Yeah.
So you want to tell us about your great work here, Hemingway in the Digital Age.
Okay, well, I've been attending Hemingway conferences since 2004 and made maybe 8 or 10 presentations at these conferences. And I submitted more than one essay for publication, but never seemed to be able to get the essay I wrote published. There's a lot to that, of course. There's usually a team of reviewers that reviews the work, and it has to be scholarly in order to be published. But I went to a conference in Venice, which is one of the locations that Hemingway wrote about and lived in, Venice, Italy, and I gave a presentation there on his last novel, which was Across the River and Into the Trees. And it's a novel that's not well known because it was not well received at the time, but it interested me. And I gave a paper on that. And then about maybe 6 months later, I get a letter or an email from an editor. And she says, though we haven't met, I would like you to invite you to submit a essay for this publication. Well, that was like, I don't know how she got my name or anything, but okay, I better take advantage of it because this is an editor contacting me. I've been trying to contact editors prior to this for years with no avail. So I did submit her a proposal and then later a essay. What I didn't realize is that it had to go through 3 levels of review before it was going to be published.
Was it a blind review at all?
Yeah, there was Kent State University Press had its reviewers, and she reviewed it and had some other people review it. So 3 levels of review and 2 revisions later, the article was published. And after a point, it does kind of feel like you're losing a little bit of your own creativity because you got to comply with whatever the standards and guidelines that the editors have. But in any case, it was finally published and came out about 2-3 weeks ago. And so mine is one of about 10 essays that make up the book called Teaching Hemingway in the Digital Age. It's a series that has been running out of Kent State Press for about 5 or 6 years, different topics on Hemingway. So the idea is to equip teachers with the tools they would need to teach Hemingway to today's students who are digitally oriented students. So I adapted that paper that I gave to teaching and submitted it.
So the title of your paper, your contribution is?
Yeah, the editor gave it the title because I couldn't come up with one myself, and she calls it Concrete Particulars in Teaching Across the River and Into the Trees by Ernest Hemingway.
That's a nice title.
She liked it.
So are there some main points from your essay that could be pertinent for our viewers?
Well, this is a kind of a unusual novel in that there's 2 scenes, or 2 chapters, I should say, at the beginning of the novel that relate to duck hunting on the part of the protagonist, and 2 chapters at the end that relate to duck hunting, and in the middle of it is this May-December romance between an Army colonel and a young 19-year-old. And most of the critics felt like this was like kind of sappy dialogue and really uninteresting and monotonous. But the beginning and the end, I found places in there that had been overlooked by other scholars where there's a change of heart on the part of the protagonist, and he kind of, towards the end of his life there, feels a little bit of remorse for things that he had done related to the war largely, and he and this antagonist, the boatman that's piloting the boat, actually come to kind of a truce. And so there's a movement and change in there that's not seen in the rest of the novel. And that's what I wrote about.
That's exciting. So Hemingway, really popular hero, I guess, would you say? People visit his places he's been, where he's stayed, they study his work. He is well known? Are there some items or thoughts maybe that a viewer or a current future student maybe hasn't thought about or learned or considered about Hemingway that's important?
Well, there's always new work being done. For example, in a recent publication of the Hemingway Review, a scholar noticed a mounted fish in a taxidermist shop in Maine that supposedly had the inscription "Caught by Ernest Hemingway." And so she was thinking, well, how did Ernest Hemingway, who was fishing in the Caribbean and the Atlantic, South Atlantic, how did a fish from Hemingway get up here in Maine? And so she backed that off and did investigation and research on it and found the story and then wrote the story up. And that's the kind of thing that, would inspire people to do new work on Hemingway. There's always something, different to be found. But I've been to most of the places where Hemingway lived and worked, and including Madrid, Spain. There's a restaurant there that has in the window, Hemingway had a meal here. Hemingway used to eat here. And then there's another one down the street that says, Hemingway never ate here. So one of the things that Hemingway seemed to do is he made things popular that weren't popular before, like the running of the bulls in Pamplona was hardly known to any American prior to Hemingway writing about it in The Sun Also Rises. And yet there's others that feel like, well, Hemingway ruined this place because now it's so popular, it's not the place it used to be.
It's on the map every year,
Yes. But we've had conferences in places where he's, as I said, lived and wrote: Key West, Kansas City, Chicago, Upper Peninsula Michigan, Spain, Switzerland, Italy, and our next conference is going to be in Montana and Wyoming in July of 2020.
Oh, it's beautiful out there that time of year. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
So I've been to the Keys, and it's amazing to just immerse yourself walking around. The lore of Hemingway and the talk of Hemingway's everywhere. It's fascinating.
Hemingway used to get upset about that because he went there to be, and this is why also he went to Wyoming, is to be alone with his thoughts and write. He didn't want to be noticed by other people, and the Key West Chamber of Commerce started publishing his address as a tourist spot, and people used to come by and gawk at him. So he hired somebody to build a 6 or 8 foot wall around his house, which you can still see there now. Because he continued to move to places where he felt gave him more privacy to do his writing. And of course, he ended up in Cuba, and then finally in Sun Valley, Idaho.
So anything else you'd like to share with us from this book, this teaching on Hemingway, your essay? It's exciting stuff.
Well, just that if you endeavor to be a writer, you have to be very patient and also very persistent about keeping up with your work, because you're going to probably get a lot of rejections before you get any type of success like I did. I've been writing on Hemingway for 10 years, and this is the first article I got published. And it also takes a lot of work. But at FSU, where I graduated, the professors would tell us that your PhD, it's not a teaching degree. It's a writing and research degree. And most of you are going to go on and become teachers, but the way you're going to make a name for yourself is through writing and research. And the degree we're granting you is giving you the tools to do that. Well, if that sinks in and you think, well, I got to be practicing that.
Right. It never stops.
Because if I'm not practicing that, then, it was, not worth the effort.
Now, you and I have talked about where I could buy a copy of this. Where could those who are viewing our discussion, those that Hemingway catches their interest, where can they buy this text at?
Well, there's a website on the back here that's the Kent State University Press website, and they can be purchased directly from them.
Can you find it on Amazon, or is it mostly through their?
Well, I checked Amazon, and it's not up there. It's not on there now. It's just not available from Kent State University Press. But
Well, good.
someday it may be, but
Everything seems to find its way to Amazon.
everything seems to find its way to Amazon. But last time I checked, it wasn't available there, but it is available from the Kent State University Press.
Wonderful. I'm going to go out and check that out. Now, I also enjoy talking to you about, hopefully I word this well, you're a master swimmer. I mean, you compete at the highest level internationally. And we've had no prep about this, but not put you on the spot, but I just think that's an amazing activity you do and another important contribution to our community.
That also has a lot to do with, or has a lot in common with writing and teaching, in that in swimming we're taught to set goals, and almost all the coaches will tell you you've got to write your goals down. If you don't write your goals down, they're not going to happen. So you write goals down. It usually comes to something like, I want to swim a minute 40 seconds 100 meters butterfly or something like that by such and such a time. So you make it a goal that's achievable and measurable, like we do in education with
Right.
that new program, Quality Matters, I think it's called.
Which we're quite excited about. That's right.
Which is coming up.
Yes, yeah.
And then you back off from that, the length of time that you feel is going to be necessary for you to achieve that goal, and you break that down into monthly goals, and you break that down into weekly goals and daily goals, and then you work your way to that. Well, writing is kind of the same thing. If you want to get something published, then you're going to have to set up a timetable for you to do that. It took 2 years to get this one published, 2 years from start to finish. Now, I worked on it for about 1.5 years, but then there was the time in publication and editing and everything. It takes time too. So I think the swimming has taught me some of the techniques that I use in academia as well. But it's important to keep your physical condition, which is also tied in with your mental condition.
Well said. They're connected. Well, Dr. Bell, I always look forward to our conversations and discussing topics of the day. I learned a great deal from you, sir. This is a wonderful accomplishment and a great resource, a great contribution to our community. So thank you for your hard work on that.
Thank you.
And I'll have to end with Buenos dias, senor.
Buenas tardes.